Hey, folks, welcome back to The Pulse. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. It is 11 o'clock Central Texas time. And once again, it is Steven Friday. Folks, I'm really excited about this stream. I'm excited about this stream for like a bunch of reasons, but here's the most important reason. It's because I asked Jesus what he wanted me to do this morning, and he gave me this, and it is just unbelievable. Just so excited about it because that's the key, right? That's what I was taught. I was taught by Steve is, hey, why don't you ask him yourself, man? And that's what I did today. Woohoo! And of course, that's what is encouraging. And so I think you're going to really love today's stream. We're going to hear from our buddy Steve Staggs. And Steve would always say, hey, don't look to me, ask him yourself. And that's what we're going to be doing. And folks, this is really special. I experienced 37 episodes with Steve Staggs and, numerous hours for months and months and months talking to him privately. And when you go back through this stuff, it is so like rich and dense with like wisdom. And I like have an aha every time. And I'm like, I had an aha when this happened. And it's like the third time's a charm. So really excited about this. But today it's all about trust. And where do you put your trust? And I think in the crypto world, we often are thinking about stuff, right? Stuff. And in life, I've noticed this. You lived as long as I have, you recognize that a lot of people are stuffing a lot of stuff in places where Jesus goes. What I mean by that is, we're trying to make sense of this world and it's upside down. And there are rules to this game. And if you just take it as a physical place and not a spiritual one that's combined, you go, all right, what are the ways in which I can get mine? Because if you think about it, why do you go to school and you're raised and you have a perspective and you want an advantage? And of course, I saw over the last couple days, how do people get an advantage in crypto? Well, how do you get an advantage in life? A lot of times that advantage is at the expense of others. And Steve often talked about an upside down world, and that upside down world was driven by scarcity, and that scarcity was by extracting value. And in the extraction process is an enslavement and it lacks freedom. And so I often say that Steve taught me and showed me the true gospel. I really saw Jesus standing alone. And that's so cool. And so I love it that I get a chance to honor him. He's gone, but we get to hear from him. And to think that God is using that to give me another aha and go, whoa, this is super cool. So let's say let's say hello to you in the chat, and then we'll get into the content because it is awesome today. It is awesome today. And it was awesome every day, but it's awesome again. Mike still number one. Thanks for being here, buddy. Hi, Jesus. Can you put Steve on for a minute? Oh man, I took a shower this morning and I literally it's something about the water. I don't know if you have this, but like ideas and concepts and all these things kind of happen in the shower for me. And what was amazing about that is I literally saw Steve's face. I literally like really, really amazing. Like I saw the side of his face and he was kind of smirking. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And so just thankful, just really thankful. I don't know how all this stuff works in all of its intricate details. I just know that it works and it's real and that's really cool. And that's really what I'm here to do is just to remind you of that and to be faithful and to be consistent. And I think that's really important. Steve talked about practicing and how important practice was. And for a guy who was a professional athlete, boy, athletes of that caliber know what practice is and how important it is. And that kind of discipline, I hope rubbed off a bit on me. And so I do this not just for you, I do this for me. One is it helps you when you teach it, and when you share it, and when you think about it, and when you consider it, and when, and that's what we're doing together today. Mike Costello, thanks for being here. I hope you're doing great, buddy. I hope this is a huge encouragement to you because it has been for me as I've prepared. Hello to my right side up family. You are all the best. Robert Keller Jr. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Crypto Heartbeat, thanks for being here. And then my buddy. Hello. What's going on, KDM? Good to see you. Ego Foundation in the house. Heartbeat has some pep in his step this morning. Great to see it. I do. And that's what happens when you think about who do you trust and what do you put your trust in? And when you recognize that what you get in return is significant, what you get in return is a peace that transcends all understanding. And what is the association of peace but joy? And it's like, how can you have joy in such difficult circumstances and situations? And that's really a big part of what today's stream's all about. So thanks for being here. And then the David Lee, all legends. That's fantastic. David Lee traveled all the way from southwestern Indiana to come to my dad's funeral. And he is the guy who represents, he's the legend himself. And a guy who's going through difficult times. And, we continue to pray and exchange wishes with Jesus about David Lee's situation. And what's amazing is the more I understood about prayer, and we talked about that 2 episodes ago, again, it was episode 8, is this idea of exchanging wishes and getting a new perspective, having Jesus's perspective. And what we talked about in that stream was the fact that even Jesus, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he literally was praying to the Father, a stone's throw away, he asked the Father, please, if there's any way possible, remove this cup from me. And it was a very literal, direct request. And of course, in that exchanging of wishes, when you look into the details of the words, like Steve taught me to, you realize that you not only gain a new perspective, which is the Father's perspective, but you're given the faith to endure. And that's what I pray for you, David, is that faith to endure, to understand that all things, like he's got it, man. He's got it. He's got it. It's hard to imagine when going through and facing troubles of many kinds to understand that he's got it. But Steve asked me, he's like, Matt, do you got it that he's got it? And I'm like, I think I do. I think I do. Good morning. There he is, Carter Hill. What's up? We're going to have Carter Hill on in the near future here when he has some time to be able to come in and be a guest, because talk about somebody that Steve Staggs has transformed his life and been such an encouragement to him. That's Carter Hill. And he'll be a guest here on Right Side Up with Steve Staggs in the coming weeks. So I'm looking forward to having you on, Carter. And then Hex Glenn, what's going on? Good to see you. It keeps ripping through all eternity because eternal riches of the kingdom. Amen to that. Freddie Quotes, it's great to have you here. Crypto Bigfoot, there's only one true gospel. That's right. There's only one true gospel, and it's Jesus standing alone. Extravagant Taste, it's tasty. Good morning to you. Crypto Ethos, out of all crypto videos, I look forward to this one the most. Dude, thank you so much. And thank you for coming in during that stream and introducing yourself. It was a real encouragement to me to see you and to know that there's people out there that value this. You know what's amazing, Steve, I keep coming back. Steve always said, he said, are you interested? And that's the thing, right? That's what separates. Are you interested? So yeah, Living Water, there you go. If anyone has children and found the app called Thousand of Faith-Based Bible-based shows and shorts, awesome, fantastic. Hex Monkey, you need to know something. This is so great that you're here. So you are a big part of this stream that we look at. Is that it's actually one of your questions that Steve talks about. That's a big highlight of this whole stream. So excited that you're here. I think it's meaningful that you're here. And then Crypto Book Bigfoot, and then there's the guy Ramon Carrillo. It's so great. Had Ramon on the channel talking about his project that he's working on. Crypto Jesus, as many know him on Twitter. David Lee with the love and Extravagant Taste. Acting Emaciated, welcome back, man. There you go. Hey, amen to that. We're moving away from Disney and YouTube and focusing on scripture-based screen time for the kids. That's fantastic. Fantastic. All right, folks, here we go. This is, and I'm going to get out of this screen so we can have this full screen. This is amazing. So this is what happened this morning. I literally got up this morning, came in the office early, and I said, all right, Jesus, what are we doing? And I said, what do you want me to do today? And he said, episode 18. So I went to episode 18, and I had previously watched it a long time ago, and it always remembers where you left off. And so I pushed play, and it went and blew my mind. I want that to happen for you. So let's check this out together.
So the point is that we have lost our ability to think in the most basic terms. I mean, so let's start with, when you get up in the morning and you look outside, or after dinner, after your glass of wine, you decide you're going to go out and take the look, sit on the patio, and you look up at the stars, you look at the big old moon that's in the sky. Do you wonder how in the world it all got here? Well, you basically have two choices. You can either say somebody built it, or you say it happened all by itself. If you're one of those that lands on the side that somebody built it, it seems to me that the reasonable question is, what do you have in mind when you built this thing?
Yeah. Why is it here?
Yeah. What I mean, this is no small effort.
No.
Somebody had to go to a lot of effort, expend a lot of energy and resources to build all of this. Why did you do that? Why doesn't anybody talk to us like that?
They don't. You're absolutely right.
That is the most basic, fundamental thing to ask. And if you ask it, then if somebody has the ability to build all of this, do you think they might have the ability to speak?
Wow.
Huh. You don't even have to have any of the religious or biblical or scriptural construct in it. You simply look out with a bit of curiosity and say, wow, this dude has some skills. Why did you do this? And then how did you do it? If you land on the other side of the question that, oh, it happened by itself, I wonder if there's another place where I can see that something became something out of nothing. Can I duplicate that process? Is there well, if I can't duplicate it, then how did that happen? And if you can't come up with how that happened, then man, now we're back to number one. Somebody must have done this thing and got to a lot of effort to make it happen. I'd like to know that guy. And by the way, Matt, I'm describing my own personal experience in that. I eventually got to the place where, hey man, I want to know you. I want to know the guy who built this. I don't want to know about you. You know, there are a lot of opinions about who you are. There's a lot of things that are out there are telling me what I have to do to gain your favor. Hey, if that's the case, we're all screwed before we get started. So why did you build this? And what did you have in mind when you did? And oh my goodness, off to the races we went. Okay? So we don't know how to think anymore. We don't know how to step back and say, well, gee whiz, if you did that, I wonder if it'd be a good idea for me to kind of get an idea what you had in mind. Matt, virtually everything we talk about on this program is telling you the result of those conversations.
No, absolutely.
I didn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Not smart enough to figure out any of this stuff. It's him saying, come on up here with me. I'll show you what's going on.
And what's the proof of it too? You know, I shared with you in the green room before this huge list of all of the things that I can remember us talking about, right? All of these themes. And, you know, we often say, and I think the big ahas that I generally have are like, wow, this is really simple. It makes sense. Yeah. And you know, what's interesting is that's something that is, I think, a part of who he made us to be, is that, you know, when I came through, you know, my dad was a, you know, scientific, you know, secular guy. And my mom was, you know, was a believer, right? But my dad kind of ruled the roost, right? And so, you know, from my dad's perspective, you know, religious stuff was hokey. And my mom knew that, you know, she was, you know, working on us. And so any opportunity that we'd have to be exposed to Jesus, she would, you know, support. But it didn't come around very often, you know. And it's interesting, you know, my first experience with kind of religious things was in middle school. And I went to like the youth group or something. I was invited to play, I think, softball with you know, and my older brother was. And so he was tagging along with him. And I ended up in this middle school deal. And there's this lady, I mean, she must have been 100, that ran this, you know, youth group. And she said, you know, she wanted all the kids to bow their heads and close their eyes. And she said, raise your hand if you're not saved. And I thought, you know, what a hokey thing this is. And, you know, of course, you know, you wanted to fit in and I wanted to do all this, but I knew, and it's interesting, you know, what we fashion that we think is good and what we think is right. And there was never, you know, there was talk of, you know, personal relationship with Jesus, right? There was kind of this talk about something. But I've always felt, really up until meeting you, that there wasn't anyone who was sharing the practical nature of walking this out in the moment. And so even now, I attend church on Sunday and I sit there and I go, yes, I agree. Jesus did some great things. Wow. And the Bible is an account of those great things.
Yes.
And I've read it and it's some awesome stuff. Wow. Miracles, all of these things. And then I hear these stories about what's to come, you know, and this promise of this future. But there's zero when it comes to, you know, basically the only practical things that I hear from anyone is, well, be nice to people.
Yeah.
And tell them about Jesus. And I was thinking about this. it's kind of hard to tell someone about someone that you don't talk with. It's hard
Yeah,
to relate to something. And, I've seen so many things that are, miraculous in my life, and you have as well. And you think, well, what's been the outcome? And what I always come back to is like this lowest common denominator. If I had to drill it all down and say, what is the benefit of following Jesus? Like, give me one thing. And I would say a peace that transcends all understanding is the biblical way I would say it. And the other would I say is rest.
yeah,
I would say and contentment. And that's why I always come back, what's the currency of God?
yeah,
And I realize, hold on, out of fear, I hoard. I want to achieve and be recognized. I want people to think that I'm somebody I'm not. I want to cover the things that I feel inadequate about. I want to puff up the things to make people like me or recognize me. And it's empty and I feel lost. And I recognize, hold on, you know, here's one that continues to whisper in my ear, you're my son. I love you. And, you know, I will give you peace and rest. And I go, that's the thing that I've been looking for all this time. I've been chasing all of these things thinking that they were going to bring me peace and that I was going to have contentment. I was going to have proper perspective and I was going to be able to endure this stuff. Um, and I think about it, what drives us? What drives us to do crazy stuff? What drives us to, and whether it's, money and crypto, for example, and all this stuff, um, I'm like, I can get sucked into that stuff like the next guy. I like the game. Um, but it's almost like I think once you've been humbled, like I've been humbled and you've been humbled,
yeah.
it's like, all right, I got nothing. So he's constantly, it's constantly all coming back to him. And
Yeah.
I feel like no wonder so many people in jail find Jesus. No wonder so many people at the end of addiction find him because you try everything you can in your life to try to make this thing work and you just can't do it on your own.
Well, like the gentleman said to my friend, you've been pushing Jesus on me, forever, but I need real answers.
Right.
Well, man, if that's not a hope, let me just take stock of what that guy just told me. Huh? Jesus, what do you think about that? So we don't think in those terms. We instantly move on the defensive at some level, or we push blame or something like that instead of backing up and saying, hey, Jesus, what about that? I'm telling him about you, and he's telling me you're not enough. He needs real answers. Well,
I
let me
think
tell you
people,
what he's telling you. He's telling you he needs real answers, and you're not offering.
well, and
Oh, okay. Well, let me regroup here.
I think people need to be encouraged to ask them yourself. That's what you did for
Yeah.
me. You
Yes,
said you
absolutely.
said, "Hey, ask them yourself." I almost feel like people don't think they can. I really mean that, Steve. I really think a lot of people think, "Well, I can't ask him what he thinks about this." And I know it
Well,
seems silly, but I really feel like people don't feel like they have permission because we talk about him so much and no one's ever saying, "No, you can talk with him." And if you look at every freaking account in the Bible, they're talking directly to him.
yes, and they're recording it. Well, Matt, see, you just hit the nail on the head. Why is that so? We described a few minutes ago that we can only think the way we've been taught to think. And we've been taught to think that anyone who talks to God is a flippant psycho.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you mean God talks to you? Oh, who are you? Who do you think you are that God talks to you?
Right.
Well, whose nature and character is speaking that? Who is the origin of that nature and character? Whose benefit, to whose benefit does that statement accrue? Does it benefit God? Does it benefit us who are interested in knowing God? Who does it benefit? Doesn't benefit God, doesn't benefit us. Who do you think you are that God talks to you? Oh, I can't talk to you because if you say God's talking to you, and I can't, who can compete with that? See, everything that we are taught sets up defenses against doing the very thing that we're told we need to have, which is a personal relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, it's
Well,
crazy how yeah.
what relationship is personal where there's not dialogue? There's nothing personal about that. As a matter of fact, we talked about it last week, I think. If a father doesn't talk to his son, we call that abuse. Well, why is it the earthly father can be accused of being abusive if he doesn't talk to his children, and yet our heavenly father, if he talks to us, we're considered wackos?
Yeah.
See, I mean, these things are just, once again, step back and go, whoa, what are we talking about here? What's happening? Okay, Hex Monkey doing that. Awkward and challenging for me, working on it. Good for you. That's it. Working on it.
Yep.
Guess what? Eventually, this surprisingly awkward and challenging will eventually become as easy as breathing. Just keep practicing. Okay? And don't expect more of yourself. It's not your responsibility to learn to hear, it's his responsibility to teach. Our responsibility is to be attentive. Okay?
Um, okay, I just had like something just hit my brain here. Um, oh my gosh. Okay, Hex Monkey, I got something for you. This is, what's really interesting is I can relate so much to you,
Yeah.
because that's been my experience too, and of course I dealt with this since I was in middle school. Um, so what really resonates with me in this scenario is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And what's interesting about it for me is this idea, what does it mean to trust in the Lord with all your heart? Right. And I think about this. Well, if there are spiritual forces that don't want us listening to Jesus, right? They would do everything we can to use social pressures to say, you can't listen to God, right? All the things we just defined. This idea, what does it mean to trust in the Lord with all our heart and lean not on our own understandings? Okay. So this is such a meaningful reminder to me all the time. Okay, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. So the way in which I understand, I can't rely on, right? So there's a way in which I understand things that are not his ways. Okay, so he's defined that. Okay, so I'm going to trust in the Lord with all my heart, and I'm going to say, okay, my understandings are this self thing that I've got is going to lead me in the wrong direction because look at the results I've gotten. In all your ways, acknowledge him. And I think what's interesting, you talk about interest, Steve, so often.
Yeah.
And I love the way that this is written, and I'm sure there are many different translations of this. In all your ways, submit to him. Some of them say, in all your ways, acknowledge him. Well, what is all? And I that's what I've been practicing. This is a part of my own journey. It's like, well, what is
Yeah.
all my ways? And I said to you the other day, Steve, I was like, I'm making a list of stuff, and I'm like trying to think about the day and all the stuff I have to do. And I go, hey, Jesus, what am I forgetting?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he tells me.
Yeah, right on.
And literally, I'm like, where does that come from? Well, it has to come from him, right? It's not like I get to the end of my list, I'm like, what is it? And I go, hey, Jesus, what am I missing? And it seems so weird, and I acknowledge that, Hex Monkey, that it is. It feels awkward at times. You're like, what do you mean? And this, what I think is really cool is that there's so many things in the scriptures that remind us that, well, what is this idea of holding every thought captive? What does it mean to pray without ceasing? What does it mean to not rest on your own understandings, but in all my ways acknowledge him? It didn't say in all your ways be like him exactly. No, it says
Or
you
know it
can
all.
or know it all. In all your ways acknowledge him. Okay, so I'm living in the context of the moon and the stars and this creation, and you made me, and I'm like in your likeness. And this guy Steve says I'm like an Elohim. I have no idea what that means, but I'm going to acknowledge you. I'm going to acknowledge you. Hey, okay, you're a direct part of this thing. And I went through this whole phase of this idea of the veil being thin, right? Like the veil to me is like one side of the coin, other side of the coin, physical, spiritual, and it being super thin, pressing my face up against this thin veil. And and I think about that literally of going, hey, I'm here, I'm interested. Hey, what's going on over there? Like, help me understand. How does this become one? In all your ways acknowledge, and he will make your path straight. And in that straight, I realized something, and this has been over the period of the last 8 months with you, Steve, is that my path has been swerving a lot over my life. But amazingly, he's been with me the whole time.
Yes.
And what's amazing is even the story of the prodigal son, I did find myself eating the slop of pigs.
Yeah.
And what is a straight path? And in this whole thing, the straight path isn't a path of big crypto bags and diamond hands and Lambos. The straight path is one of peace. But then there's also this idea of like the more and more I crab walk and I become more of a professional and I take it seriously and I discipline myself and I go, you're the only one that has the authority to speak to me. What do I see the outcomes of that is the revealing of things that he would like me to do. And then there are ideas and there are all these things. And I say, hold on a second. So you want me to carry the ark? You want me to partner with you in work that you're doing? Hold on. And it's going to be easy for me because you created me to do it in advance. And you showed me all these things and you redeem everything I've ever done in my life. And why I was so into gold and why I'm so into aliens and all of these, you're redeeming all of that stuff. And you're actually folding that in to the story moving forward. Hold on. You've been at work and you created all this since the beginning of time began. And I'm obviously now just coming into an understanding that, hold on a second. There's way more to this life than eating and sleeping and dining. And hold on a second. The richness and fullness of this also has its reward. Because as we talked about stewardship yesterday or last time, there's this idea of like, hold on, good job. I gave you a little bit and you did a good job with it. Here's some more. What? Yeah. Ultimately, you're going to be in charge of 5 or 10 cities. And you think about this, like not everyone, I mean, it's pretty clear in the scriptures too. There's weeds and there are wheat, there are sheep and there are goats. There are things that are made for noble and things for ignoble purposes. And it's like, hold on a second. So if I'm hearing your voice and I'm hearing this story and I'm understanding that I can I can trust in you, and you'll make my path straight. I want a straight path because you're the one who created the path.
Yeah.
So this sounds like real life. This sounds like, hold on a second. And what's amazing about it is this is the way it's supposed to be. It
Yes.
only feels like a shortcut because we live in the upside down world. This is actually the way it's supposed to be. And in contrast of this darkness, it seems like a shortcut. It seems like we're cutting on the deal. It seems like, wow, I got the bonus in this one. But I think what's so incredible is to say, I'm just going to do what the farmer does, Steve. I'm just going to, you know what? I'm going to recognize that I don't germinate the seed. I don't make the sunshine. I don't make the rainfall. And I do not create the harvest, but I will wait on the Lord. And there
Yeah.
will be yield that comes from this. And that's what I love about even Richard Hart products. He actually aligned this with a very structure and framework of things, whether he knew it or not.
Yeah.
So I get excited about that, Hex Monkey, because I can relate to you 1000% because it felt hokey. And I think that's how so many forces keep us from this. And this isn't something you have to broadcast, and you don't have any responsibility to teach others. You just have to ask him, and he's available. And the question is, the proof's in the pudding. That's what I would say. Don't trust me. Don't listen to Steve. It either has power or it doesn't. And when I, September 10th of 2000, said, all right, this has been a bunch of BS to me up until this point, but if you're real, you're gonna have to show me that this is real power, not fake stuff, not churchy stuff, not I gotta fake this. There's some game I play in to fit into society. And he said, nope, I'll lift 1,000 pounds off your back and I'll make you laugh. And I go, all right, I'm in. I'm in. But if it's not real, and that's the coolest thing about this, not that I would test God, but that I just see him wink at me over and over and over and over. Sorry, I just kind of got on a roll there.
No, do not apologize. That's what it's all, that's what it's all about. I mean, it's eventually you have your own stories,
right?
And you've been kind enough to say, Steve, share with my audience some of the things we talk about and the stories that you're experiencing, and that's what I do. And Hex Monkey's going to have his own stories, and one of them is going to be, man, when I first started this, it was really awkward and weird, but I just kept after it, and eventually it became like breathing. That's my vocabulary. Hex Monkey will have his own eventually, because guess what? That's what happens when you practice. I mean, name one thing in your life that you got good at that you didn't have to practice. Name one.
Yeah, not one.
I don't have a single one. See, I had to practice. I had to start from the very basics, screw it up. And why do you think you call it practice? Because in practice, you have the liberty to screw things up. Because when you screw it up and you learn how to not do it, that helps you learn how to do it.
But you know what, though? I will also say, Steve, you did hit a home run when you were 14. But that's the beauty of the process, Hex Monkey. Yeah. He lets you hit a home run at 14. Yeah. And that's the cool. I feel like it's with golf, I terrible screw everything up. I just want to throw my clubs into the water. And then that one shot, I'm like, I'm back. Back.
That's right. Only one good shot around, and you're spending your $50 the next weekend.
Well, I had this experience with Ray yesterday. I was really struggling with a decision. I was kind of in this weird spot, and I felt very uncomfortable. And Ray was there. And I'm like, Ray, I just need to talk to you, man. And I broke it down. I just said, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. And you know what he said? He says, what's Jesus telling you to do?
Yeah, right on.
He's like, you know what to do.
Right on.
Rather than like giving me some prescription, he's just like, hey, what do you think? And I'm like, yeah, I do know what to do. I do know what to do. I know what he's telling me to do. And you know what? There was fruit from acting on that. Yes. And then when I was done with it, he said to me, good job. And that to me was like, and it wasn't just good job, like, hey, he spoke to me audibly. He didn't. I had peace, a deep sense of peace about it. And I was like, all right, let's move forward. And I think about that with every decision or everything that we make, is this idea of this currency is peace about things. And it's the one thing that I think drives so many people is it's almost they go from crisis to crisis and fear to fear. And it's debilitating.
Well, one of the things about the kingdom of God and that you eventually learn is it is totally void of confusion, of conflict, of irritation, of vengeance, of fear, of uncertainty. It is. Do you mind if I tell you a story?
I love your stories.
And there are a few of them here and these are very, very practical, folks. I can tell you stories in business, that were mind blowing. We were living in Great Bend, Kansas at the time, and I had this sense for about a year that we were going to move. And we'd already been in Great Bend a couple of different times in the 80s. And so this is like, around 87, something like that. Um, and so finally, I just said, okay, Lord, this thing is really driving me crazy. Either I need to know what you've got in mind here, so we can take whatever action you need us to take, or I'm just going to put this out of my mind and forget about it. Because I've been trying to be attentive here for about a year, and this thing is starting to wear on me some. So I got my pen and my pad out, and getting ready to write, as was my custom in those days. Um, and man, instantly starts speaking. And there was like, do you remember the old when it got to be like midnight in the old televisions where the circle came up and the
Yeah.
that static
Yep.
sound? Well, that's what it sounded like. Man, I was trying to make heads or tails, and finally I said, okay, Lord, when you're ready to talk to me, I'm listening. So whenever you're ready to do that, I'm in. And now, first of all, do you notice the dialogue that's kind of happening? The nature of the exchange. I know he's talking to me about something. I know there's a time frame for when this is going to happen. It's not occurred over the previous year, so it's starting to become irritating. So now I'm going back to him for clarification. As I go back to him for clarification, I'm ready to hear and act on what he's saying. And the moment I say, okay, I'm ready, static, spiritual interference.
Hmm.
See? So then what was the response? I'm not going to react to that. I'm not going to, muscle my way through it. No, it's not my responsibility to hear. It's my responsibility to be attentive to hear. And that whatever it is, there's interference. Okay, Lord, when you're ready to do it, we'll do this thing. I'm ready. About 30 minutes later, I'm sitting in the chair, and all of a sudden, I see this like a tube come down over the top of me. It wasn't a physical tube; it was a spiritual tube. Things that we don't see. There's audible speaking, but they're speaking, but that's in the spirit. It's not heard with the physical ears. See, there we don't yet know how to distinguish the physical from the spiritual. And so, anyway, there was this tube that came down over the top of me and completely enveloped me. And Matt, it was totally void of disorder. It's the only way I've ever been able to describe it. It wasn't that there was no disorder, it was totally void of any disorder. It was a measure of peace and orderliness that the human language does not have the ability to describe. And then what would happen is I would receive the answer before I could form the question. Yes, are we going to move? By the end of the summer. When? Out of town. In town or out of town? Out of state. In state or out of state? It went just like that, and it happened with such rapid fire that my mind did not have the ability to process the answer before I formulated the question, because the question is what was in my mind, not the answer. If that makes any sense. And so he gave me the entire instructions by before the end of the summer, before school starts, you'll be moving to Oklahoma City. There's some work I need to have you do down there, and we'll make all the arrangements so that can happen. This, by the way, was around the end of June, so we had like 6 weeks for all of this to come together. And as soon as it was, and all of this, by the way, everything I shared with you came before I formulated the question. Okay. When we were finished, the tube raised, and I was back into the world of disorder, and it was marked. I could feel it, I could see it, I could sense it. I now know what disorder looks like and what the total absence of disorder is like. And they are not even in the same universe or creation. So fast forward, we had some friends that were in Fowler, Kansas, which is right on the border between Oklahoma and Kansas. We were down there visiting. Got there on a Friday evening. It was part of our custom. We would spend a weekend with them. They'd come to Great Bend and spend a weekend with us. And so Saturday morning, I get up, have my time, and Jesus says, "Okay, I need you to gather up everything and head to Oklahoma City, and don't come home until you found a place to live." Oh, wow. Well, Lord, I only have about $150 to my name. It doesn't matter. Go down there. Don't come back until you found a place to live. Okay. So I tell our friends, I tell my wife, she says, what are you talking about? We're not ready to go down there and stay until we find a place to live. I mean, we just got, she told me all the practical things, that our wives are so good at. And I said, yeah, I know. Well, hopefully this will be a quick trip. So I tell my friends, we pack up, we head down there. The kids are all excited about it, and they're younger at the time. And so we go down there, we check into Red Carpet Motel, and we don't have a clue about Oklahoma City. But what we have is $150. Finally, about our motel room was like about $40. Now we're down to, and I think we were down to our last $20. So I get up in the morning and I say, okay, Lord, we're here. You told me I can't go home until we find a place to live. I've got $20 left to my name, and my wife is a little irritated.
A little.
What do we do? And he said, well, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. I said, well, I know that's true because you just said it, but I don't have a choice. What do we do? He said, go buy a house. And I started laughing just exactly like you did. Go buy a house. I got 20 flipping bucks.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, Lord, if you want to drop 25 grand on me before today to go do all it needs to be done to go buy a house and all that stuff. And by the way, where do we buy this? There are 10,000 other questions, right? So I said, okay, Lord, what do we do here? He said, well, you asked me and I told you. Now you do what you want with what I told you. So I said, okay. So I come out of the bathroom and I go to my wife, and where the kids and my wife are sitting around there, and in the motel room, and she's sitting on the bed. She said, and so my kids start saying, okay, Daddy, what did Jesus say? What did Jesus say? Okay, Daddy, what did Jesus say? They're all excited like they were. And my wife is just snarling at me.
Yeah.
Okay, what's up? What did he say? I said, well, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. She did not laugh.
No, she did not. I know that.
She did not laugh. She said, well, okay. So what did he say? I said, we're to buy a house. And she said, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah.
And I'm telling on her a little bit.
Yeah.
Because this is the real world of trusting.
Yeah.
We think of trust in Jesus and stuff like that, like it's this big, emotional landmark thing that we do. No, trust only exists in the presence of risk. That's the only place it exists. And man, we were in deep risk. So my wife was experiencing or demonstrating the intense risk that we were experiencing at that moment. And it was no small thing. So we're laughing that we can laugh about it now, but at the time it wasn't funny. And so my kids were going, oh, yay, Daddy. So we're going to buy a house. Okay, how fun. And so they go outside and my wife goes and follows them. And this story is a little long, but I think it's worth telling because it demonstrates some of the very practical elements of learning how to live in this way. And it is very awkward a lot of times until you learn. So I said, okay, what do we do? We're supposed to buy a house. What do we do? So I pull out the newspaper. They had newspapers in those days. I went into the classified, into the housing, and I start pulling on some of my real estate background. And I said, well, the only way we can do this is if a home seller is willing to carry the paper. Yep. Because like I said, we got 20 bucks. And so I start looking for the for sale by owners. I go through 3 or 4 of them. About the 4th or 5th one that I call, all of them are saying, no, they're not willing to carry the paper. We need to be cashed out, yada, yada. I finally get to this guy. He's probably the 5th one, 4th or 5th one. So I tell him my story. I said, don't know if you'd be interested, but I need somebody who's willing to carry the paper. Are you that guy? He said, yeah, I could probably do that. He said, what are you looking for? So I told him my story. He said, I've got the exact house for you. It is the perfect house for you and your family. I said, really? He said, yeah, why don't you plan on meeting me this afternoon at 4 o'clock and I'll show it to you. I have some people living in it right now and I just need to give them a little heads up. And so it'll be available for you at 4. So he gave me the directions. We didn't have GPS, so I had to write it down with all the instructions, and I know nothing about this city that I'm in. We get there And it's in this beautiful neighborhood in this beautiful house on the outside. My wife is saying, wow, what's this all about? We go inside, he welcomes us in, lets us go through the house. Every detail of the house was precise to the appointments of our furniture. Even to the extent in the bedroom they had this not the wainscoting but the
Sure.
little edging array around,
Yep.
and inside there was wallpaper on the inside of this, and that wallpaper was the identical pattern to our bedspread. Identical.
Of course.
We had certain dimensions of things fit perfectly. Everything was precise. And I said to him, I said, wow, you said this house is perfect for us. um, Man, that's the way that it's looking. And he said, well, tell me your story. And I said, well, and I told him, good Lord told me to buy a house, that I can't go home till I've found my house. I've got $20 to my name. The only way I can do this is if you carry the paper, and my bank is willing to cash you out. Not my bank, but his bank was willing to allow us. And it was during a depressed time in the real estate market in '88. He said, I can do that. I said, wait a minute, I don't have a nickel to put down. He says, well, you're okay with signing a promissory note, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, we'll do the deal. Shook my hand. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, when Jesus said to buy a house and I had $20 and laughed at him, by 4 o'clock that afternoon, we were the owners of a brand new house that perfectly fit every appointment um, in our furniture, with our furniture in that house. And we drove home from Oklahoma City to Great Bend, Kansas, which was about three hours away, just singing and praising and just having a grand old time, because what was impossible 8 hours earlier was done, and we're heading home with our last $20. And gas was cheap enough then I could put about $15 of gas in and had enough to buy us a little food heading home. That's what it looks like. Now, I could make up that story with 10 writers, but Jesus does. And that's what it looks like when going back to don't lean on your own understanding, kind of a thing. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. When he says trust me, you can know that there is a bunch of risk waiting for you around the corner. But that's why he's saying trust me. I've already got the issues dealt with in the areas of risk. I am no risk. It's no risk with me. It's only risk without me.
What a story. It's amazing. Wow, how about that? That was worth going through again, if you ask me. I'll tell you, I listened to that this morning because the Lord said, hey, it's episode 18. And that's where I picked up. Isn't that crazy? Like I had watched some of that previously, and it would have been a long time ago, and literally told me that. And I literally picked up right where I shared with you. And I listened all the way through that. And I'm like, okay, this is really important to share. And of course, Hex Monkey and his question is so great because I just want to reiterate that Steve is so meaningful to me. And the reason he was so meaningful is because, unlike a lot of things that I've experienced in my life where someone wanted to get an advantage because of what they knew, or they wanted to sell me something or convince me of something or make me join their church or something like that, there was no, the motivation around why Steve spent so much time with me was because of the first thing he said to me. And he said, I've been called to the men of the transfer. And it's funny because I said to him, I said, yeah, the Lord has asked me to unlock global generosity by giving. And he showed me the feeding of the 5,000. And it's funny. And he's like, I've been called to the men of the transfer. And I thought about it when I first heard that. I'm like, really? The Lord has called you to invest in men who are interested? I'm like, are you an angel? Like literally, I said that. I was like, is this guy an angel? And you know what? In an amazing sort of way, I think in the common vernacular of angel, Steve was. In the practical, he was an Elohim man who was listening to Jesus and doing what he asked him to do. And I think it's really hard for us because this world, this upside down world, is telling you no, only what you see is real. And we're limited. You know this. We only see in the light spectrum a very narrow band. And it's interesting, we get into the infrared and we're seeing stuff that's been there that we're like, okay, this is weird. Right? There's a whole There's a whole thing that we are experiencing that is beyond our perception. And of course, I'm just thankful for the scriptures that basically tell us that story. There's more to this story than you know. And of course, there's a lot of people who are searching. And one of the things I love about Steve is he didn't judge anybody that believes something differently than him. In actuality, he embraced it. What he delineated was the difference between somebody who's interested and someone who's not. And one of the challenges that Steve had was a lot of the people that claim Christ are actually very close minded. Because here's the thing, it's almost like they've built a wall. And if you remove one brick from that wall, the entire thing falls. And that's not my analogy. I've heard that before. But it's like you're building something up that is really could fall like Jenga. And in reality, this thing is actually extremely elastic because if you really think about what you say you believe, that there's one who is the creator of all the things, that's omnipotent, that's omnipresent, that's outside of space and time, that has created all of these things. If you acknowledge that, right, that there is a creator, then and you've attributed all of these characteristics, you're like, well, what can't he do? There's got to be more than this. And of course, as you are interested and seek it, you start seeing through it. And that's the thing that Steve helped me understand is that what am I seeing through? Is that, you know what do we create in this world? We create in this world AI. And think about what Chat GPT is. I remember the first time I heard about AI and they're like, it's a chat bot. I'm like, what good is a chat bot? That sounds dumb. But think about what we've built. We can't help but create like the creator did. We're going to create something that we think has all of the knowledge and all of the information of mankind. And we're going to give you an interface from which you can ask it questions and it will speak to you. That's not by accident, folks. What we are designed for, the real creation design, is that we don't go it alone. I mean, think about this. The lie is that over billions of years, we tripped and fell into this, and that by accident it was created. But you get through this for a while and you go, hold on a second, there's got to be more than this. And of course, what do the scriptures say? And what are these stories? And even extra biblical things, right? There's a lot of people researching a ton of stuff about the stories of the Sumerian texts and the flood narratives. And, there's science people that are going into, what about the Younger Dryas? And people are looking at archaeological things like Gobekli Tepe and other things. And they're saying, hold on, there's a lot more to this story. And there's a lot of commonalities in this story. But what it's really suggesting is, hold on, there was a creator. And then it looks like there were like really powerful gods, and we call them Elohim. And there was a class of people that had some skills and kind of gave us some things, gave us some, some ways to handle this world. And what's interesting about it is Moses goes up on the mountain, right? And what does he get? He gets the 10 Commandments. And if you think about this, everyone's so enamored by the book. Well, what's the original book? The original book was carved in stone by the hand of God himself. And he wrote with his finger. But what happened when Moses came down the mountain and saw, right? When they looked and saw that Aaron and the folks were building a golden calf, pretty pissed off, and literally threw down the tablets and broke them. And so if in fact the word is greater than the creator, then Moses would have glued those back together, right? He would have gotten some mortar and he would have sewn those back together, glued them back together and said, all right, this is more important than the guy who gave them to me. And that's what we've been doing. That's a lie. We basically said, no, I'm going to make the book greater than the creator. But what did Moses do? He went back up and he said, hey, I broke those. I was kind of ticked off. But what is the first commandment of all of it? You should have no other gods before me. And what does that mean? Idols. And what was the first thing that they encountered? And what is the story? And why does it look the way that it does? Because when Moses was up on the mountain, he got an analog for the story. He got a picture of the throne room of God. And he got a picture of what to build in the tabernacle. And the tabernacle had a veil. And on the other side of the veil would sit the glory. It would sit this holiness of God, and you would be able to encounter it, but there was a separation between that. And it showed all of this stuff. He ended up building the tabernacle, right? We know about the ark. But what's so amazing about it is it was created intentionally that the people would partner with God and would carry his glory in a box. And what was interesting about that box that they put the 10 Commandments, they put the manna, and they put Aaron's staff. Why were those things in there? And what was it? And what did he say it would be? And what did it do? Right? Sorry about that. What did he say that it would do? He said basically that I want you to partner with me, but do not put your hand to it. It's interesting. There are accounts of people who put their hand to the ark and they died. They added death into it, right? And it's interesting when you follow the story of the ark. Steve asked me one time, he said, "Why didn't the ark fly?" And I'm like, I guess that's a pretty good question. I'm like, okay, that's really weird that you would ask that. That's such a bizarre question to ask. He's like, well, why didn't it fly? I mean, could he have done that? Well, yeah. I mean, he led him by pillar of fire and smoke and provided and all these things. And what's amazing about that is so many times Steve would say to me, he would say, the reason that God created is that he wanted his man that he created to rule with him in his nature and in his character. What is your nature? Right? It's how you're made, who you are, like your ethos. Who are you? Your nature and your character. And of course, I don't have to sit with you long to know your nature and your character. And I know that in my own nature and character, that when I get drawn off sides or I get in a difficult situation or I get hangry or crypto heartbeat's got, high blood sugar or low blood sugar or whatever it may be, the things of life, I don't act in the right nature and character. And it grieves me. But it's amazing that we have one that is said, the reason I did this is so that you would rule this creation. I made this for you. And of course, it says Jesus made all things were made for him and by him. And to think that there's this story where a guy like Steve goes, hey, whether you're religious or not, you look out at the stars, you look out at the moon, you go, how did this happen? And why am I here for such a short time? And as you start inquiring about that, you look at the stories and you go, there's more to this. And it says it very clearly that we see dimly and we will see clearly. And Steve sees clearly right now. But what's amazing about this isn't all there is. And so people in this world that have essentially aligned themselves with evil forces have basically said and been convinced and lied to that this is all there is. Once the lights go out, you're done. It's over. So I might as well get mine while I can. And so I think about this idea of like, what was it made to be like? What is the kingdom come? Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The spiritual and the physical becoming one. Well, I would attest to you that we see it frequently, but we see it for a moment and we create it when we consider others in addition to ourselves. So I dealt with a big issue these last couple days. I didn't expect to have a major influencer in the crypto space punch me in the mouth. And because that wasn't my intent. I thought perhaps the people in this project didn't know that people were, basically they bought and then they were starting to dump like immediately. Well, the story came out of what it was, and it's really interesting. And that is this left-hand side of the slide, as Steve would say. This upside down world is built on I'm going to collude with other people and we're going to have an advantage. And what we're going to do is we're going to get in early because we've gotten tipped off of when this thing's going to launch. And we're going to tell all our buddies and we are going to pump it. We're going to all buy in at the same time. And as that hits the radar of everyone else and it sucks in the degens, we're going to sell. And we're going to make big money. And so I just looked at the public blockchain and what did I see? People put in $500 to $1,000 and they got 30,000 out. Not everyone, but it's still happening today. And I think about that. There are many people who celebrate that. They're like, look, we won. We're better than you are. And I would ask you the question, is that winning? And so you think about this. What is the nature and character? You can do all kinds of things. I mean, organized crime exists. You could get with a group of people and steal people's stuff. Is it right? Is that the right nature and character? Because in this world, if you are godless, if you don't believe that this was created in advance and it wasn't, and you are not known and who you are doesn't matter, then you might as well do whatever the hell you want to do because this is the best it's going to get. And of course, this Jesus guy comes along, and the scriptures them say that no, do not store up your treasures on earth where moth and rust and decay happens, but store up your treasures in heaven. And I think, and I look at a guy like Steve. Steve wasn't Elon Musk, right? He wasn't Bill Gates. He wasn't some super rich guy, but he's the richest person I have ever met in my entire life. Steve Staggs stored up more riches in heaven than anyone I've ever met in my entire life. And he wanted to pass that along to me. And what's amazing about it, it created a bit of a conflict in me. And the conflict it created in me is, what am I promoting? What am I doing? Because I think about it, that this world that's trying to take has used something that could be used to free the captives. This change in the financial system, it could be used in a way to unlock abundance and generosity. But there are people, and me included, do I want, if I put in $1,000, do I want 30 grand? Heck yeah, I do. But I can't help but think that there's somebody that I'm taking it from. And I have essentially used and manipulated the system to draw them off sides because they're noobs. Everybody's got to learn, right? I don't care about you. I just care about me. Selfish ambition is what drives the upside down world. I mean, look at it, right? We've built these systems of extraction. And what do those systems of extraction do but enslave us? And I think there's some of us, and that's what I think defines this community. What makes it unique is that there are people like David Lee who will travel 7.5 hours to your dad's funeral. Why? So he gets paid? Does he travel to my dad's funeral because, oh yeah, I want to get a 30X? No. Considering others in addition to yourself doesn't mean you don't want big bags and diamond hands and Lambos. No. It just means that you're also considerate of others. And that's what I see in the ethos of Richard Hart in this ecosystem. Is I see somebody who goes, I'm going to warn you of these things that are trying to ensnare and enslave and extract from you. And let's really change the very nature of this world by working together. And it's so easy for us to go, you know what? I don't care about anyone but myself. I'm going to go and take. And here's the thing. Here's the truth, folks. In this upside down world, you can. You can. At what cost? And are you a winner? Right? You might win at this game that's restricted to this for the 100 years that you may be here. But there's an eternity waiting. And what is amazing about this is the truth. Because what are we trying to get? What does this money provide? What happens if I get the 30X? Is money the idol that it's going to promise what you want? Because I think what most people want when they want money is they want rest. They want peace. They want a peace that transcends all understanding. They want to be at rest. They want to have joy. They want to have security. They want to have stability. And you know what? I've had money. And you know what? There's good things about it, but it's a tool. And so here's the question. Could we win together? I think that's part of what Richard has talked about. I think that's what's attracted me to him. Because I mentioned before the fact that we don't make the sunshine, we don't make the seed germinate, right? We partner with this creation, just like carrying the ark. And the farming analogy is the best because it generates yield. You plant one kernel of corn, and if it germinates, it grows into a stalk, and that usually has 2 to 3 ears of corn. And there are 16 rows. Yeah, Hold on, yeah, 16 rows? There's 1,600x. There's a 1,600x. That's what this creation yields. Isn't that crazy? And if you look at all the systems, it's not just that number, but that's the number when it comes to corn. Plant one seed, if it germinates, and you wait, and the sun shines and the rain does, and you can do all kinds of things to help it. You bury a fish under it, right? You can fertilize the soil, but you don't do any of those other things. And what ends up happening is this creation is intentionally built for you. And if you're willing to partner with it, there's an abundance. It's amazing that this wisdom that comes from not worshiping a book, it comes from a place that is accessible. And it's a mystery, but I also look at it like a bit of a test. You go through life and you're like, maybe this will work. Maybe that'll work. Maybe if I do this, maybe if I, and then you get to a point where you get so broken down and maybe somebody offers you some drugs or you find yourself like, it's just easier to manage when I drink a couple beers. And it does sometimes. And you're like, you know what? If I was in a constant state of drunkenness, I wouldn't have to focus on the things that are an issue for me. And then what about the euphoria? Well, I could do drugs and I could have that euphoric feeling because that's really what I want. I want the dopamine or whatever it may be. And these are counterfeits. These are things that are fitting into place of which really drive us, right? What is sexual um benefits? What are all these things? It's built on a system and a structure, and it's a thing that we have a replacement for. And what is amazing, what Steve taught me and what I've come to understand is no, there's a right way. And that right way isn't just a morally right way, it's the actual way that it's been constructed. And if you partner with the creator and the creation, there's an abundance. But when Steve said, been called to the men of the transfer, I thought, oh, it's a transfer of wealth. Hey, we're all going to be rich. Oh, tell me more, Steve. Tell me more. Nope, it's not what it is. The transfer is the transfer of the man. It's us. And it's really ironic that when they built the temple, that they asked people to give to it. And the people from around that community, they had different layers. The first person to give was David himself. David said, I'm going to give my personal wealth to the Lord for the building of this temple. And that was before the treasury of Israel. And then the people, depending on what they had, also came and gave. And if you think about this, when Jesus came on the scene, he talked about that you are the temple of the Holy Spirit. He even explained himself as his own body as being a temple. And of course, what did he do when he came into the temple? But cast out the things like the money changers. And when I think about this idea that the collective people at the beginning of building that temple were building God's man, everyone brought something to build that. Well, what is that a picture of? That's a picture of unity. There's a picture of understanding that we bring what we have been gifted with to the table. And I think in a really strange sort of way, that's what I saw in the Mexican community. It's something that is really rare. And it's what I think when I look at the early church from Acts 2:42. They committed themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread, right? And as anyone had need, they would sell things and give to them as needed. And it was a collaborative, not a communist scenario, right? No, and one in which people were considerate of others. That's called community. But in the church world of my experience, I had to do everything right. And if you got out of line, man, people are going to get you in the line. Guess what's so cool? I go to a Hex event and what do I find? It's okay. You're accepted for who you are. And especially when there are green candles, you're high fiving. Like, I like this. Well, what does that mean when you're accepted and fully known? Well, let's rest in peace. And it's really interesting that we find ourselves collectively getting together and seeing, you know what? Do I have to fake it? Do I have to puff myself up? Do I have to cover the things that are inadequate? Or can I just be? We all are using all kinds of things, whether it's self-medication, relationships, money, as idols. I'm doing it. You're doing it. And to think that there's another way. And I always would joke, and I joked with him on that stream. I'm like, you know what? I feel like I've been cut in on the deal, man. I feel like I've been told the cheat codes, the secret. No, no, it's how it's meant to be. Why did God create? And why, when I look out at the stars, and why, when Steve said, hey, I want to know this guy that did this thing. And he said this, and probably one of the greatest things he ever said to me was, name a relationship in your life, a meaningful relationship in your life with someone that you don't talk to. I'll wait. There's not one. You don't have a single relationship in your life with a person you don't dialogue with. But boy, I'll tell you what, you say to somebody, yeah, I'm listening to Jesus. I'm asking Jesus his perspective. I'm understanding how he sees things. And when I get changed, right, I exchange my wishes for him, he gives me faith to endure that struggle. And he says, consider it pure joy when facing troubles of many kinds. And I'm like, pure joy? Yeah, pure joy. I'm like, I know you got this, but do you know that I've got this? Wow. That's the last thing Steve said to me. Episode 37. Actually, it was right before he passed. 2 days before. He literally said to me, Matt, do you got it that he's got it? I do. But we gotta constantly be reminded of these things. I mean, that's why you couldn't store up the manna. Remember the manna? It was only for the day. It says that his mercies renew each morning. I think there's a lot of people who have gone through a lot of things. They're like, I can't even approach this guy. This guy is perfect. This guy's got it all. I got nothing. Well, are you interested? And that's why I feel like Steve made Jesus more accessible to me, because I always felt like I had to have everything together before I could approach the throne of God. And it's not true. Are you interested? And I was thinking about this. My own kids, if kids get in trouble and make stupid decisions, I'm like, no, my love for you is conditional. It's based on what you do in your performance. Or do I love them for who they are? That's how God sees us, right? He made us. We're an extension of him. If you think about this idea of him giving us the knowledge of good and evil and helping us understand how to make choices, he wants us to choose him. And the analogy I often think about is in the gaming industry. Let's say you're going to create this game and you design this game, and then you build the characters and you choose all the landscapes and all of the quests and all of the things. And you are the architect of this system, and it's this open world and it's fantastic. And you create this character. And this character, he's this amazing guy. He's got a sword and this great outfit and flowing hair, right? And he's strong and all this. And you play with him and you created him. And one day he turns around and he looks at you, and you're there with the controller and you're so satisfied in him. You're like, wow, I made this cool guy. And he looks up at you and he goes, I'm not interested in you. And he clips the cord and he goes his own way. And you're sad. You're like, oh man, I made that dude. I really liked him. He had a cool sword. And that outfit, dude, that was awesome. He had chainmail. It was pretty awesome. And so occasionally you check in on him. You're like, I wonder how he's doing. It's exactly what's happened with us, right? And so when we think about sin in our lives, what is it? It's going our own way. He said, I want to do this with you. We have a role to play. It's not like just God's going to do it all. No, he's doing things in this world. He has set it up. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Your will be done. So it's his will, not ours. But he fashioned you uniquely. And the question is, are you interested in knowing what he's got for you to do? I mean, the fact that I could meet anyone who said, yeah, the Lord told me that I'm called to the men of the transfer. I'm like, that's worthwhile. So to wrap all this stuff up, this is the stuff. This is what it's all about. And it's interesting when you look around at all the religions in the world and you look at all these things. This isn't a religious thing, folks. It's either the creator or he's not. He either talks to you or he doesn't, right? And so this structure of a guy like Steve for 40 years, literally going, I mean, the Lord said to him, like he was the Hebrew of all Hebrews, the Christian of all Christians. And he said to him, Steve, would you still follow me if I took away your Bible? And that's where it began. And it struck him. And so in this journey that he had, he was asking questions. And to think that we could dialogue with the very creator of the universe, what a dream that is. I mean, we're trying to do that with ChatGPT. I want an advantage. Tell me the answer. And I'm just telling you folks, the brilliance of God's creation is he doesn't give me the lottery numbers. That's intentional. You know what he says to me? He says, "You're my son and I love you." He affirms me. But also when I ask him questions, he reminds me. And then he convicts me. But the Spirit of God is always coming in, right? It's coming in and saying, "Hey, oh, whoa, 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 hold on." And it reminds me of everything Jesus said. And then I go, "Hey, Jesus, what do you think about this?" And he changes my perspective and he gives me the faith to endure. I am so thankful for Steve Staggs because he showed me that there's a practical way of living out this life that no one ever told me about. Folks, this is more valuable than any crypto that goes up 10,000x. But here's what's really interesting. If you understand the purpose and plan that God has for you in this world, there may be some riches and wealth in it, but it's not just for you and your enjoyment. It's not for your selfish ambition. It's for the accomplishment of his plan and his will. And I'm like, let's go. I think that's why God is doing this thing with crypto. I think that's why everything is falling apart. I believe that everything is being exposed to the light. And as it's exposed, we see it for what it is. And I really, truly believe that this crisis era that we're coming into, and everybody's all afraid, you don't need to be afraid. Let it be what it is. He will give you the faith to endure it. But I promise you, this isn't the end. So no matter what, do not see death as judgment. Do not see death as a punishment. See it as a reward. That's how Steve saw it. If you have that perspective, then you go, to live is Christ, to die is gain, just like Paul said. And you're like, all right, I fear no man. What do you have me to do? And so rather than me being, steered this way or that way because of fear porn or because of political things, no. I walk this out and I ask him how he sees it. Let your yes be your yes, your no be your no. And it's like, wow, so you give me rest. And then the biggest thing that I'm struggling with that he's working on me about is not overreacting to things. I overreact to things, get emotional about things because I care about them. And I hate to be misunderstood. And what ends up happening in that situation, in those scenarios, I get drawn off sides and then I escalate things to a place that they shouldn't be. And it's destructive. So why did he say, hold every thought captive, pray without ceasing? Because as I do that, which Steve would do, I literally watched him look up and literally ask Jesus in the moment, is that there's self-control in that. And it's like you are literally going, all right, well, you're accessible all the time. All right, why wouldn't I follow you? And the way in which he traverses you through life and goes, how are we going to buy a house? We only got $20 left. I think one of the greatest things is Jesus speaks to you, you can take it to the bank. However, this is a journey, and the 2-year-old or the newborn doesn't speak English, if you will. And so I love to X Monkey's question, right? It feels awkward. Yeah, just keep practicing. And what's weird, what I see in all of this stuff is it's a sense of rest, a sense of peace, a sense of it's going to be okay, that nothing can separate you. Nothing can stand in the way. And a peace that transcends all understanding is just that. I can't even understand it. I can't even articulate it to you. So trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understandings. All of my understandings are, well, it's got to be this tokenomics and this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to, well, I've put my hand to things. Are there things to create? Yeah, if he asks you to create them, create them. Right? Do your best. But consult with him, right? At all, right? Acknowledge him in all things. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not. Lean. You're not leaning on your own understandings. I got this. I know what to do. I'm a really smart guy. I'm super strategic. Well, right? There's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. He's just standing at the door and he's like, "Hey, you want to come in? I'm knocking. You there? You interested?" That's it. You don't have to be some certain person. You certainly don't have to be religious. You don't have to join anything. The creator of the universe is available and he speaks. He's alive. Try him out for size. See what happens. That's all I did. And I'm thankful that there are other people who did the same thing because it ultimately isn't about what I feel like we've created a program of onboarding called salvation. Like you just got to get saved. Well, okay. I think that's for Jesus to do, not me. Okay. All right. There's a thing called the fruit of the Spirit. And it's interesting because it says a tree is known by its fruit. And what is the fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, faithfulness, goodness, kindness, self-control. I think I got them all. I think I might have thrown one extra in there. Just think about what those things are. Is that the nature and character of your life? Does that represent who you are? There's many times I've written tweets in draft form, and I literally just like, should I send this? And he's like, no, you shouldn't. I think what God is asking me to do is to provide value, to credit an account rather than debit an account. And I feel like we've got something really special in this community. And I think he's going to change the very nature of the financial system. And in that process, unlock generosity. It seems like such a daunting task, and certainly no man can accomplish it. It's like, all right, trust me and I'll show you. Folks, thanks for joining the Pulse today. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. And thank you, Lord, for Steve Staggs and what he has shared with me. I hope he's a blessing to you. We'll do this again next Friday, and we'll likely have a guest. Maybe it'll be Carter. I'll have to ask Carter if he'll do it next week. But thank you so much for being here, and take care of yourself, and don't mess with Texas, as you know by now. Take care, everybody.